In the 5th century, the administrative machinery of the Western Roman Empire fragmented, the centralized bureaucracy dissolved, and the traditional Roman Senate, the ultimate arbiter of social rank, vanished from the provinces. In the power vacuum left behind, new localized kingdoms took root. In the Iberian Peninsula, this was the Visigothic Regnum Gothorum of the 6th and 7th centuries. This created a structural problem for the ruling class. Without an emperor to grant titles, or a senate to maintain the official roles of nobilitas, there was no formal way for an individual to prove they actually belonged to the aristocracy. Modern historians have often assumed that post-Roman nobility devolved into a purely pragmatic arrangement. If you owned massive tracts of land, commanded immense wealth, or had the ear of the king, you were effectively a noble. But textual and epigraphic evidence from the period points to a much stricter system. Boasting about biological lineage was not a display of poetic vanity. It was a highly formalized mechanism designed to keep outsiders away from the levers of power. To see how this system worked on the ground, we can look at the physical artifacts left behind in ancient Lusitania, near modern-day Portugal. Here, archaeologists uncovered the burial epitaph of a man named Sintitius, also known as Dedonum. Inscriptions from this era were almost entirely commissioned by high-ranking individuals. Sintitius made a very specific claim on his tombstone regarding his ancestry. The text reads, Paterno traens linea Getarum. Sintitius is explicitly claiming descent from the paternal line of the Getae, meaning the Goths. This was a well-established custom among the local Lusitanian elites. They consistently used explicit claims of ethnic ancestry to validate and enhance their own aristocratic status. If the highest-ranking individuals in society were taking the time and expense to carve these exact genealogical claims into stone, biological ascendancy was acting as a foundational social credential. The theoretical rules governing this social credential were codified further east, in Toledo, the intellectual and political capital of the Visigothic kingdom. Operating within this sphere was Isidore of Seville, the leading intellectual figure of the era. He compiled an encyclopedic work known as the Etymologiae, an attempt to define the origins and parameters of all concepts in the known world. Within this text, Isidore provides a strict, explicit definition of what constitutes a noble. He writes, Nobilis, non vilis, cuius et nomen et genus scitur. A noble is not vilis, or lowborn, but someone whose name and lineage are distinctly known. Isidore firmly anchors the social concept of nobility to the biological reality of genus. You cannot be a noble simply by acquiring wealth. Your origins must be historically verifiable. The leading mind of Visigothic Spain officially set biological ascendancy as the absolute, non-negotiable baseline for social privilege. The question is whether Isidore's strict encyclopedic definitions were confined to high-minded philosophy, or if they were actively deployed in local political power struggles. We find the answer in the Lives of the Fathers of Merida, a critical 7th-century text that functioned as ecclesiastical propaganda in Lusitania. The text introduces Bishop Masona as nobilis ortis, of noble birth, and genere gotis, yet Duke Claudius is identically introduced as nobili genere, of Roman parents. In these local texts, the terms Goth and Roman are not acting as strict biological DNA tests. Instead, they are functioning as parallel synonyms for elite status. The Visigothic elite fused ethnic identity and noble birth into a unified rhetorical tool designed entirely to validate their exclusive right to rule. If possessing a known noble lineage granted legitimacy, the natural consequence was weaponizing the lack of it against political rivals. This creates what scholars call the aristocratic bias, a deliberate literary habit among writers of the era to explicitly call out humble origins as a method of permanent discreditation. Isidore notes King Gesilaic's mother was a low-born concubine. This was weaponized to stain his virtue, framing his overthrow as the consequence of tainted blood. Lacking a proper genus didn't legally bar a king from taking the throne, but it left him politically vulnerable, exposed to constant attacks from those who viewed themselves as the true elite. Lineage in Visigothic Spain was not about mere bragging rights. It was a lethal political weapon, actively used to gatekeep authority and tear down competitors. All of these variables, wealth, royal proximity, and lineage, converge in a single historical crisis, the conspiracy of the Arian bishop Svmma against King Recicaired. The historical account is highly specific about the conspirators. First, they possessed massive wealth, described as opibusque periquam datissimos. Second, they held royal office, serving as comites. But ultimately, these wealthy counts were also nobiles genere, of noble biological lineage. This reveals the complete aristocratic equation. Wealth and royal favor alone could not buy entry into the uppermost echelon of society without the requisite ancestry to anchor it. The elites engineered a closed system, where biological status was the final, non-negotiable prerequisite for entry. As Roman structures receded from Iberia, the vacuum was filled by something deliberate. The Visigothic elite established a systemic reliance on textual and biological gatekeeping. By monopolizing the rhetoric of lineage, the Visigothic aristocracy successfully restricted access to the highest echelons of power, formalizing a model of exclusivity that would underpin the kingdom's social structures for generations. In Visigothic Spain, blood and text were the true currency of power.